guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far. So today's video is going to be all about eyeshadow palettes, which is one of my favorite topics when it comes to makeup. I am so excited to film this video. I tried to film it last week and for some reason I just could not get the words out. So I'm sitting down to film it today and I hope that it goes a little bit better because I feel like this will be just a fun video to film and also a little bit helpful, or at least I hope it'll be helpful because I have a whole range of eyeshadow palettes. So I have some affordable options, some higher end options, and I'm just going to do comparisons, swatches, reviews, and let you know which ones I would pick up and which ones I would avoid. If you guys like this format, let me know in the comments below and I can continue to film videos like this when it comes to new releases. I kind of like the 5-in-1 format instead of just doing separate reviews. That way you get an idea at some alternatives if you're not interested in certain palettes. So let's jump into it and I'll chat about them. So let's kick it off with the Subculture palette because I do have some thoughts on this palette and I want to share them with you guys. So this palette is from Anastasia, Beverly Hills. It retails for $42. I ordered mine right off their website, but it's also available at Sephora and Ulta online right now. I don't believe it's available in stores yet, but it should be coming very soon. This palette is absolutely beautiful. First of all, it comes with a dual-ended eyeshadow brush. One side is more of a fluffy blending or crease brush, and the other side is more of a densely packed shader brush. So it does come with a brush, which I think is a pro. It's nice when they include brushes. The palette itself comes with 14 shadows, 11 mattes, 2 duochromes, and 1 metallic. And okay, I'm trying to think the best way to share all of my thoughts in an organized manner. I was excited about this palette because the Modern Renaissance palette is one of the highest quality palettes that I've tried. I was late to the game with the Modern Renaissance palette. I purchased it way after everybody else was obsessed with it because I didn't know if the colors were going to appeal to me. And to be honest with you guys, I didn't have a ton of luck with Anastasia's shadows in the past, which I know is kind of like I'm kind of in the minority. Most people have loved their shadows for years and years, and I just didn't really have a lot of luck with any of their other eyeshadow palettes. So I didn't know if I was going to be the biggest fan of the Modern Renaissance palette, but I definitely love it. It's one of my favorites. The shadows are very pigmented, very blendable. They do kick up a little bit of powder, but I feel like all of my favorite shadows do. The ColourPop shadows do that. The Anastasia shadows do that. Kat Von D's do that to me a little bit. Not quite as bad as Anastasia, but it was something I kind of overlooked because I loved the colors and the pigmentation of the Modern Renaissance palette. So when I saw that they were coming out with this Subculture palette, I knew that I had to grab it. I honestly did not care what colors were in the palette because I liked the formula so much. I feel like they're very blendable, very pigmented. So when they released the actual colors of the palette, I was kind of on the fence about it, to be honest, like when I saw that first leaked photo on Instagram, because the colors aren't something that I typically go for. I tend to be a neutral eyeshadow lover. I will wear like a good pop of color every once in a while, but I have like ColourPop shadows for that. I have some other palettes that I like, so I wasn't sure that I really wanted this palette. But then I thought to myself, the Modern Renaissance formula is so good. I know I'm going to like this formula because I love the Modern Renaissance formula so much. The formulas are not the same. They're very, very different. And I don't know if they were supposed to be the same, if they were supposed to be similar. They did say that this was a sister palette to the Modern Renaissance palette, so I think a lot of people assumed it was going to be the same. And in their promotional video, she said same pigmentation, same blendability, so I just kind of assumed it would be the exact same. The packaging looks so similar, and it just kind of, I feel like it was a given that it would be very similar. This formula is not the same. It's very different. It's a super, super pigmented palette, even more so than the Modern Renaissance palette. So if pigmentation is your main concern when it comes to a palette, this might be a great option for you. If you're looking for a unique palette, unlike anything else on the market, the colors in this palette are so beautiful. I really don't own a lot of these colors in other palettes or really as singles in my collection. So I will say it's very unique and very pigmented. The part where it loses me is that it is not blendable. I'm sure by now you've seen so many reviews on this palette. There are a lot of mixed opinions. Some people really enjoy it, some people don't like it. The fact that I have so much trouble blending this palette kind of turns me off of it because I really look for pigmentation and blendability, and I never realized that I valued blendability so highly over pigmentation until I used this palette. I feel like if it's not blendable, it's not for me, and I really appreciate this palette because I really didn't think about that until I tried this one. I feel like this palette does not blend for me. I've tried all the tricks in the book. I've tried using a very small amount. I've tried using specific brushes, and it's just, it does not blend very easily. And for me, my eyeshadows have to blend easily. I am not a makeup artist. I don't consider myself to be super highly skilled in the art of applying eyeshadows. So if a shadow doesn't blend very smoothly or very evenly, I'm going to struggle with it. I can get these shadows to work with me if I have like 45 minutes. And to be honest with you guys, even even when I have 45 minutes, I don't want to spend it blending eyeshadow onto my eyes. A lot of these shadows are beautiful. They go on really nicely, but they just don't blend out how I want them to. So that is where this palette breaks down for me. I have to say, going in with a very small amount helps with the blendability, but not enough where I would reach for this palette really over any other palette in my collection. I just do not like the formula. I find these shadows to be super ultra powdery, and I know that some people have said if you go in with a very light tap, it won't kick up as much powder. I still find them to kick up an excessive amount of powder, specifically Fudge and Roxy, which are these two shades right here. Even if I just very lightly dip in my brush, I really get like a good amount of powder kickback. And the problem is that this palette is actually expensive. If you break it down per ounce, I know some people break it down to grams. I just broke it down per ounce because I felt like the math was a little bit quicker. If you break it down per ounce, this palette retails for $175 per ounce, which might not really sound like anything, but when I tell you the other breakdowns of the other palettes, this one is insanely expensive, which would be fine because if the quality's there and the pigmentation's there and you like the colors, then that's fine. But the fact that it kicks up so much powder and you're wasting so much product every single time you use it is kind of concerning when the actual cost breakdown is $175 an ounce. So I don't know, I just feel like this palette is just not my favorite. I didn't want to make like an entire video about it because I feel like there are so many reviews out there already, and I kind of echo the sentiments of people who like it and people who don't. I totally appreciate the pigmentation, and if I wear one of these shadows packed on all over the lid, I think it works great. It's really beautiful. I just don't like to use them to blend into the crease as transitions, the outer corner. I do feel like if you blend these shadows on your lower lash line, they actually work nicely because they are very pigmented and you don't have as much area to blend. And when you blend on your lower lash line, it's a lot more forgiving if you aren't blending it perfectly well or it skips a little bit. But if I'm using them in the crease or the outer corner or as a transition color, they just do not work for me. Packed onto the lid, they're very beautiful because they are so super pigmented. You get that nice saturated color. But other than that, I just don't know about this palette. I don't see myself reaching for it very often because the colors are a little bit more unique than I would normally wear on an everyday basis. And the fact that it is so difficult to blend for me just kind of ruins it for me. So those are kind of like my summed up thoughts. I really would not recommend this palette. I think if you're looking for a unique palette and pigmentation is what you value over everything else, then maybe it would work for you. I would recommend waiting until it gets into the stores so you can really get an idea. But when you swatch it, you're going to fall in love with it because it swatches beautifully. But it's when you actually apply the shadows that it kind of breaks down for a lot of people. So just kind of keep that in mind. I feel like there are so many other good, beautiful, pigmented blendable shadows out there that are worth your money unless you really want something unique. So those are just kind of like my brief thoughts on it, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I know a lot of you guys love it, a lot of you hate it. Okay, let me talk about another unique palette on the market. This one is the Too Faced Glitter Bomb palette. So the packaging is black cardboard and it has loose glitter inside the letters. So when you shake it, the glitter actually moves around, which I feel like is a cute touch. This one is $32.14 an ounce, which is crazy. So you get so much more product for the price as compared to $175 an ounce for the Subculture palette. So I will say I applaud Too Faced for including so much product for the actual price. I do have to say these shadows are probably a little bit heavier because they have glitter in them, so that might affect the price a little bit, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So this palette comes with 8 different glittery shadows and 2 matte shadows. The matte shadows can be used as bases. Personally, I like to use the white shadow as a highlight, the black shadow to kind of darken up my outer corner, but if you layer the glitter shadows on top of the white base or the black base, it kind of changes up the color of the glitter. So I see where they were going with that. I think it is a nice touch, but personally, I kind of wish they took out the white shadow and the black shadow and put in 2 additional glitter shadows. I felt like that would have been a better idea instead of including the white and the black because a lot of people already have eyeshadows like that in their collection. So it would have been more fun, in my opinion, to see like 2 different glittery shadows, maybe a dark black shade and maybe like a good neutral. I don't know. That's just like my personal opinion. I do think the white shadow and the black shadow are good quality. They're very pigmented, very smooth and blendable. So they go on the eyes really beautifully and you can layer the glitter on top of them. So I don't don't have a problem with the quality. I just felt like 2 more glitter shadows would have been a little bit more appropriate for this palette. So the 8 glitter shadows in the palette are actually very beautiful. I was a little bit skeptical about this palette. I like a good glittery, I should say I like a good shimmery shadow for all over the lid. I'm not huge into glitter. I don't play with loose glitter. I feel like it's just messy. It's a little bit hard to work with. So I feel like this palette actually makes glitter a little bit more approachable, a little bit more usable for just like everyday wear. I like that you don't have to pull out your loose glitter, pull out your glitter glue and apply it like that and make a big mess everywhere. I will say that these shadows do go on nicely on top of glitter glue, but I don't think it's necessarily a must-have with this palette. I think they actually go best with just your fingers. So whether you use glitter glue underneath or you just use a regular eyeshadow primer, they're going to apply so much better if you use your finger to apply them rather than an eyeshadow brush to kind of pack them on. I do feel like the actual formula of these shadows is nice, which I was surprised about. They kind of look chunky, and when you first touch them, they feel a little bit, they don't feel seamless because, I mean, they are a glittery shadow, but I feel like when you apply them to the eyes, they're very beautiful. If you use a brush, they're definitely going to look completely different. They're very sheer, they don't look very pigmented, and if that's what you're going for, that might be a great option for you. Personally, when I wear like a glittery shadow, I want it to be really intense, really opaque, so I love packing them on with my finger, like I've said numerous times, so I will move on from that point. So the only reason I'm hesitant to recommend this palette is because I don't know if a lot of you are going to get enough use out of it to justify the price. I think if you love colorful shadows and if you love glittery shadows and you don't have a lot of these shades in your collection, then I think the price is worth it. The value is there. The quality is definitely good. But if you're mainly a neutral eyeshadow wearer with the occasional pop of color, the occasional pop of glitter, I don't know if you're going to get enough use out of it to justify the cost. I mean, you're really not going to get a lot of like full eyeshadow looks out of this. There aren't really transition colors, crease colors. If you want to do like a completely glittery eye, then that is totally fine. But for me, I need like a highlight color, a transition color, crease, outer corner, and I feel like this palette is going to be ideal if I want a pop of color on the lid. So if you only want that on a very rare occasion, it might be a better investment to just go buy like a few single ColourPop shadows or like a one loose glittery shadow rather than having an entire palette that's just going to sit in your drawer. They did send this palette to me for a review, but to be honest with you guys, I don't know if I would repurchase it with my own money. Again, not because I feel like the quality isn't there, just because I don't know if I'll get enough use out of it. So those are my thoughts on the Glitter Bomb palette. I think it's a good palette. I just think you have to decide for yourself whether or not you'll get enough use out of it to justify having it in your collection. Okay, let's talk about a few affordable options. So I finally got the ColourPop Yes Please Pressed Powder Shadow Palette. It was such a struggle to get my hands on this palette. I missed the first few restocks and then I finally got it. This one comes with 4 metallic shadows and 8 powder shadows. I love the ColourPop Pressed Powder Shadow formula. I've been talking about it on my channel ever since they first created it. So when I saw that they were coming out with an eyeshadow palette, I had to grab it because this is such a good value. So this palette really is a great deal. It retails for $16. You get the amount of product that you would get in 10 full-size ColourPop Pressed Powder shadows, and the cost of that would be about $50, but this only costs $16, so it really is a great value. The quality of these shadows is just completely the same as their single shadows, so I don't have any trouble with the quality. The colors are beautiful, so this palette is going to work for you if you are a warm eyeshadow lover. If you are a cool tone shadow lover, you are not going to like this at all because you're going to get so many warm shadow looks out of this palette. It has some pops of color, but it has a lot of neutrals in it as well, and I just love the color scheme of this palette. A lot of people are doing videos comparing it to the Natasha Denona Sunset palette, and I haven't tried that palette, but it's over $100. So if you can get this palette and save so much money and get a similar eyeshadow look as you would get using the Natasha Denona palette, I definitely think it's worth a shot. I love the quality. I've been using it. It's very beautiful, very blendable. The quality is the same as their single pressed powder shadows, so I don't think they diminished the quality when they created this palette, which is definitely amazing. And I really don't have any complaints with it. I think it is so worth the price. Actually, I do have a complaint. The fact that they keep restocking and it sells out in a few minutes is crazy. It's so hard to get your hands on, and I went on a rant in like my anti-haul video because not everybody has the time to sit there at their computer when the palettes go live and buy it. A lot of people work during the day, a lot of people are just busy, and some people just don't want to deal with that kind of process when they're trying to buy makeup because it's a little bit stressful, it's a little bit frustrating. So I do wish they would just kind of make a ton of them and put them up on the website. And I know like they can't predict how many they're going to sell, but they do have an idea at how popular it is. So I wish they would just kind of take take a step back and make a ton of palettes and then restock them and have them in stock so whoever wants one will be able to get one. But I know that's like easier said than done. But that is my one problem with this palette. It's so hard to get your hands on it. They first released it a while ago and they're still continuously restocking it. So I appreciate that they didn't discontinue it and it is going to be available so that eventually everyone can get their hands on it. I just wish everybody could get their hands on it in a more timely manner because it's such a good palette. The only other con for me is that the packaging gets really dirty. I don't know why companies use like white cardboard or like lighter cardboard for their palettes because they get so dirty, and I tend to be pretty careful with my palettes and I tend to clean them up, but mine is still pretty dirty after just using it for a little while. So I don't enjoy the packaging, but what can you do? I mean, it was super affordable. I think it's so worth the money and I love it. Another affordable option that I have really been enjoying is the NYX Ultimate Multi-Finish Shadow Palette, and this one is their Warm Rust palette. So I'm going to specifically review this palette, but they do have 3 other options available on their website. So depending on what colors you're looking for, you might like one of those better than this one, but this is the one that I've been reaching for the most often. These shadows are beautiful, and I have to admit I don't have a lot of experience with NYX shadows, so maybe they're all blendable and pigmented and beautiful, but I was so impressed by the quality of these shadows. The matte shadows are gorgeous, the shimmer shadows are great, and the glitter shadows are great. So each of these palettes comes with 4 different shades in the palette, and then each shade comes with 3 different finishes for a total of 12 shadows. So for example, this brown shadow comes in a matte finish, a shimmer finish, and a glittery finish. And then same with this burgundy shade, this coral shade, and this neutral shade. It's kind of a cool idea for a palette, to be honest with you guys. And at first I wasn't sure if I would use all of the different finishes, but you can use them to create one seamless eye look, or you can use them, you know, interchangeably with different colors in the palette or different palettes. I actually went in with this burgundy shadow and I placed the matte shade in my crease, the shimmer shade all over the lid, and then I took the glitter shadow and placed it like right in the center of the lid. And I loved how it was like this monochromatic eye look, but there were so many different finishes going on. I thought it looked so beautiful. I mean, it doesn't really matter how you use it, but the actual formula is so blendable, so smooth and pigmented, and they are so much better than a lot of my higher end shadows. So I definitely think this is a great option from the drugstore, from Ulta, that's a little bit more affordable. As for cons, the packaging does feel a little bit cheap. It's just like plastic packaging. It is a drugstore palette, so sometimes you have to sacrifice like super nice packaging for good quality shadows at an affordable price. But I will also say another con is that it retails for $18, which is kind of expensive for a drugstore palette. Again, if you can get it for a discounted price when Ulta is having a sale or NYX is having a sale, I think that is so much of a better price and it kind of makes more sense. But I thought $18 was a little bit expensive for a NYX eyeshadow palette. Again, I'm not really familiar with their shadows, so maybe all of their palettes retail for a little bit more of a higher price point than other drugstore brands, but $18 is kind of, I mean, it's definitely cheaper than, you know, Sephora prices, but it's a little bit more expensive than other drugstore brands, so just keep that in mind. The last palette I want to touch on, I'm not going to spend a ton of time because I have talked about it on my channel in a few previous videos, but I did have to mention it, is the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. So I wanted to talk about this one because it is kind of, you know, a newer palette. It's somewhat similar to some of the palettes that I mentioned already. So this one retails for $54 to get 0.60 ounces in the palette, and that retails, or that if you break it down by ounce, it's about $90 an ounce, which is kind of pricey for a palette. You know, I haven't done a whole lot of analysis when it comes to how much product you get for each brand and each palette, so I don't know where it stands on like the large scale version of palettes available at Sephora, but I feel like that's kind of, you know, it's more than I thought it was going to be. So this one does come with a dual-ended eyeshadow brush, and I know not everybody uses the brushes in these palettes, but I do think that is an added value that you have to consider when you're purchasing a palette. So it comes with a shader brush and then also more of a tapered blending brush, and then it comes with a bunch of shadows. So it comes with 2 shimmers, 3 metallics, and 7 mattes. So the quality of this palette is definitely high in my opinion. It's one of the better quality palettes that I've tried in a really long time. These 2 shadows right here on the end, En Fuego and Ashes, are a little bit harder to blend in my opinion. They're not as pigmented or as blendable as the rest of the shadows in the palette, which I have talked about in previous videos. But really, like, the majority of the shadows in this palette are very smooth and pigmented and blendable, and they just go on the eyes so so nicely. I honestly was so surprised, and not because I've ever had any trouble with the Urban Decay Naked palettes, but I just kind of thought this one would be, you know, just another naked palette. I like this palette because you can create a lot of different looks using it, which is surprising because it kind of looks like a warm toned eyeshadow palette, and you might just assume that you can get a warm smoky eye out of it, but I do feel like you can get a good range of looks using this palette. You can get some more natural, neutral looks, a lot of like warm, beautiful smoky eye looks, and then some darker dramatic looks. Again, these two shades aren't my favorite. I wish they were a little bit better, but I can kind of overlook it because when I reach for this palette, I mainly go for like the center of the palette for a really rich, warm toned eye look. I will say some people don't actually see a ton of variation in the shades, so it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. When I look at this palette, I see a huge difference between like the three shimmery red tone shades, but some people kind of think they blend together into one eyeshadow look. So it just really depends on what you're looking for. I will say if you like smooth, pigmented, blendable shadows, it's going to be a great option for you. But if you're more of a natural eyeshadow fan or a cool toned eyeshadow fan, definitely don't waste your money on this palette. You're going to get a warm look using this, even if you stick with like the lighter shades. They definitely lean more warm toned. The packaging is beautiful. It has to be one of my favorite palettes in terms of packaging, and I try not to like judge products based mainly on packaging, but it really is a nice touch. I love the hard plastic case, and I just think it's really beautifully designed. So that just kind of is like the icing on top of it because it really is a great quality palette. I haven't had any trouble with pigmentation, with shadow skipping, with blendability, with fallout. I feel like it's just a really impressive palette. I will say if you want to spend a little bit less money, then I think the ColourPop Yes Please palette might be a better option for you. When I first looked at this palette, I thought there were a bunch of shadows that were dupes for the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette, but once I swatched them, I kind of realized that the Urban Decay Naked Heat shadows are a little bit different. But in terms of like a warm eyeshadow look, you're going to be able to create something, you know, somewhat similar using the Yes Please palette, and this one is a lot more affordable. It's only $16 compared to $54 as long as you can get your hands on it, and I know that ColourPop's international shipping is a little bit crazy, so it, you know, it just kind of depends. But if you want to save a little bit of money, it might be a great option for you. The formulas are actually very similar. I find ColourPop shadows to be slightly more pigmented and a little bit more blendable, so I kind of like them a little bit better. I do really like both of them, but like I said, if you want to save some money and you don't want to spend $54, this $16 palette is going to be a good option. Okay guys, so that's all I have for you today. I hope this video was a little bit helpful if you're trying to decide which palettes to grab. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you let me know in the comments below which palettes you've been loving lately so I can check them out if I haven't already. Otherwise, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.